The first story is about a father who left my mother and me to be with his new wife and her children. Now he's angry with me for cutting him out of my life and is telling everyone that he's dead to me. I never thought I would write this, but here we go. I'm 17M, the oldest child in my family. My father is 44M, my mother is 43F, and my little sister is 15F. I've always loved my father and looked up to him so much that I wanted to make him proud. He was my whole life purpose. In 2019, he had to move to Europe too. We prepared to leave our homeland forever and settle elsewhere in 2022. We finally reunited with him, and I thought that would be the end of our struggles. But then, just 2 years later, he started acting strangely. He got a job as a hotel driver and he changed completely. He stopped spending time with me and my sister. He started coming late and then just eating and sleeping. We felt so distant, like he was trying to stay away from the house. My mother was the first to notice this change, and slowly, one day I was at the beach with my school when I heard shouting. It turned out to be my parents having an argument. Apparently, my father had been cheating on my mother with a woman from Morocco who had 2 kids of her own, aged 13 and 6. He had been spending time with this woman since last January, and then in a fit of rage, he grabbed my mother's arm so hard that it hurt her and stopped her from bleeding. She picked up a knife and said that you won't get out of my house. I will kill you. And he did. It was hard to take, and 2 months later he was slowly starting to ignore our family responsibilities like paying the bills and school fees. It was obvious he no longer loved us. Annoyingly, he says he still loves me and my sister, and that he will always be with us. We are not dumb enough to believe him. If he did love us, he would at least help with our responsibilities. I feel so let down and tricked. I looked up to this man. I saw him as my role model for how to succeed in life. Now he is nothing but a man who is sexually attracted to any woman who isn't my mother. Thankfully, we are all in a much better state, especially my mother. We accepted that he is gone for good, and even began claiming that my father is dead. However, from time to time, he still tries to contact me and my sister, and I don't know what to do. I also want to mention that my mother had a photo of the wound he gave her and some threats from their old chats, so she could easily file an order of assault against him. Because we are all devout Christians, she had mercy on him and refused to press any charges. They are still not officially divorced, and I don't know what to do about it. If anyone has any information or advice in my situation, I would truly appreciate it. Thank you. I'm a Christian, and I urge you to consider that forgiveness does not mean freedom from consequences. Forgiveness is a gift that is given to someone who repents and changes their ways. But to fail to hold someone accountable who has not repented and changed only gives them a license to further harm others. I firmly believe this is not God's intention, as it does nothing to further the kingdom of heaven on earth. Consider your safety and your mother's safety. Pursue the order. 0p. Thank you for clarifying. I should probably tell my mom the same thing, but from a logical perspective, he isn't living with us and he has no information on us nor the house. He has the keys to the house, sure, but nonetheless, he wasn't any harm after this incident. This incident happened in June of 2024, so it would be just a useless effort, considering we have other problems to deal with. But thank you so much for your advice. Tight shift. 5. Given the violence he has shown towards your mother, I suggest you try to persuade her to at least file a report on domestic violence. I would also recommend that she speak to a family law attorney about her rights and options regarding parental responsibilities, support, and property division. In this regard, she should at least file a report against your father. I would suggest that you try to convince your mother to at least file a domestic violence report because of the violence your father has shown towards her. You should also try to persuade her to speak to a family law attorney who has a lot of experience. They can tell her about her rights and responsibilities as a parent, as well as about support and how property is divided. In this regard, she should at least file against your father. You should not believe what he tells you because he is not doing what he says he is doing. You may find it helpful to think that he is dead to you. He hardly ever talks to you, and it seems like he is trying to feel less guilty about what he has done, not to show you his love. Encourage your mother to get a divorce. She is still a young woman who deserves if she wants to be with a kind, faithful man. Good luck. Hello, commenter. I agree with you, but my mother is a devout Christian and showed him mercy. The charges will only affect us financially, because he pays the house's rent. Without him, our financial life will be much harder, as we will only be able to live on my mother's old salary. If she wants to be with a loving, faithful man, I wish him luck. I agree with you, but my mother is a devout Christian and she felt sorry for him. The charges will only affect us financially because he pays the house's rent. Without him, our financial life will be much harder. She is currently unemployed but looking for a job, so him going to jail will only damage us. It's been over 6 months since that happened. My mother is trying to file for divorce. She believes that the court will decide on the responsibilities between my parents during the divorce process. I think right now we are not financially ready for the divorce to be filed. I am already out of contact with him and never will talk to him again. I don't want to be involved in the divorce because I don't want to have to declare my father dead to anyone. I'm very grateful to you for your interest. It's nice to know there are kind people out there. Thank you for your comment. Hello everyone. Last month I wrote about my father leaving me and my family for a single mother, and how he's angry that I don't love him anymore. Sadly, this isn't. I'm sorry to say that there is no good news. My father hasn't been paying my sister's school fees since last month. The school kept my sister in the dark, but now it's getting very serious. It's been proven over and over again that he isn't involved in our lives and doesn't care. The logical conclusion would be that we report him for child negligence. However, we are so financially stuck to the point where I'm sorry to say that my father hasn't been paying for my sister's school since last month. The school kept her in the dark, but now the situation is getting very serious. It's been proven that he isn't involved in our lives and needs to be held responsible. We should report him for child negligence, but we are so financially stuck to the point where, guys, do you know if anything has finally got sorted? Also, thanks to everyone who advised on the idea of getting a divorce. My mother finally agreed to it, but sadly we can't go as far as reporting him to the police for the assault back in June, as the case will likely be dropped. Like I said, we don't have the money. Again, thanks to everyone who was concerned, and I promise to provide any updates in the future. Comments. Side me 8, 567. Is there any way you can get him to support you financially? I don't know how the system works in Spain, but especially since your sister is under 18, he should have to pay to support his children. OP, because my parents got married in Egypt, in Egyptian law there isn't something called child support the father can fight for. 567. Is there any way you can get him to support you financially? I don't know how the system works in Spain, but since your sister is under 18, he should be obliged to pay to support his children. OP, because my parents got married in Egypt, the Egyptian law doesn't include child support, which the father can fight for. The father can get custody, but he isn't obliged to pay anything. The Spanish government only recognized my parents' marriage, but they can't judge them based on their laws, since they are still immigrants. Update. Hello everyone. I want to make this quick update before going offline for Christmas. Before I begin, I would like to thank everybody who corrected me, and hello everyone. I want to make this quick update before going offline for Christmas. I would like to thank everybody who corrected me and informed me about some of Spain's divorce policy. I am truly grateful, and I would like to apologize to anyone who got confused by my post. I want to highlight that I wasn't very knowledgeable about how the system works in the EU, and some even doubted my story because of it. These details my mother doesn't usually talk about, so I am not quite in the know. I'm sorry for any confusion I caused by saying the update was official. My mother is finally getting a divorce and might get child support. She knows people who know lawyers and counselors. I don't know when the court case will be, but it will be. I don't know if she will file the... I'm sorry for the mix-up about the update. The news is finally official. My mother is getting a divorce and might get child support. She's got connections with people who know lawyers and counselors. I don't know when the court case will happen, but it will. I don't know if she'll file the police report for the assault in June either. But I'm glad she's taking driving lessons so she can get a driver's license and a car by January. I'm happy we're still stuck financially, and my family in Egypt, my father's side, took his side. I had to cut contact with my cousins, but I love them so much, and it looks like this Christmas is going to be really lonely. But at least SHT is getting itself together. I will update you all on when the court case will happen again. Thanks to everyone who took concern. I am truly grateful. Merry Christmas. Second story. My husband's delusional daughter showed up wanting a relationship, and I love them so much. And it looks like this Christmas is going to be very lonely. But at least the court case is getting itself together. I will update you all on when the next court case will happen. Thank you to everyone who has shown concern. I am truly grateful. Merry Christmas. Second story. My husband's delusional daughter showed up wanting a relationship and an inheritance. She was conceived after her mom poked holes in my husband's condoms to trap him and abuse him. She went to his workplace to ruin his reputation. My husband, aged 42, and I, aged 30, have a very solid relationship. We have my husband, aged 42, and I, aged 30, have been together for about 13 years. We have no children, but we are very active in our nephew's life. To give you some background, my husband has a child, Laura, aged 16, with whom only my mother and, to some degree, Phil have a relationship from his nuclear family. The reason being, she was conceived when her mother poked holes in my husband's condoms to trap him and abuse him. We've been together for about 13 years and don't have any kids, but we're very active in my nephew's life. To give you some background, my husband has a 16-year-old daughter, Laura, with whom only my mother and, to some degree, Phil have a relationship from his nuclear family. The reason being, she was conceived when her mother poked holes in the condoms. It was a big drama, and my mother begged my husband to have a relationship with Laura, but he simply couldn't. He even had to get psychiatric help to be able to cope with it. The mother admitted she did it to make him stay with her because of responsibility, but it didn't work. He pays child support. He pays child support because the law says he has to, but that's it. I didn't hear about this from my husband. I heard about it from my mother-in-law. She said she liked me a lot and hoped I would be a good enough person to get my husband and Laura back together. I was shocked and asked my husband about it. He explained that he was going to tell me before we moved in together, and to be fair, he had already given me some information and explained the situation, and even told me I could go to therapy with him and see the psychological information if I wanted to. My mother-in-law had a different version of events to the one I had heard from my husband. He had told me before we moved in together that he was going to tell me about his situation. He had already given me some information about it and explained it to me. He even said that I could go to therapy with him and see a psychologist. I didn't want to, but things were not like my mother-in-law had said. Her sister confirmed this and explained that this was the reason she was not as close to her parents anymore. Things went okay for some time, and even the wedding went without issues. We all have several boundaries, and my mother-in-law more or less respects them. Although she still has constant communication with Laura and her mother, we have several cycles of very low contact with her. But things went into overdrive once my mother-in-law got pregnant with Mark. My husband started telling everybody that it was not her first grandchild and all that cryptic stuff. My husband was so uncomfortable about it. She wanted Laura to be involved in birthday parties, christenings, and so on, but we all refused. She also invited both of them to her birthday party a couple of times, but we didn't go. The new issue is that Laura has been so sad for not having the biodad in her life. My husband said no and left. I stayed while grabbing our stuff since I had brought food, and told her it was not going to happen. Laura just wants to know my husband since he is her real dad. She is okay with her stepdad, but it's not the same. She said she would give her our address and contact info. She really wants to have a relationship. I told her I would call the police on all of them. I said my SL will be very upset with her when she hears of this, and that she should not be surprised to get less access to Mark. Mill called my husband cruel, and me a bad person for encouraging his cruelty towards an innocent child. I told her I would call the police on all of them. I said my SL will be very upset with her when she hears of this, and that she shouldn't be surprised to get less access to Mark. Mill called my husband cruel, and me a bad person for encouraging his cruelty towards an innocent child. I told her I understand Laura is innocent, but she most likely would not be asking the same if it was a woman who conceived in the same circumstances. Ada edit. I thank you all for your opinions, even if you say we are monsters or cruel. I'm trying to keep up, but I think I need to clarify some things. I asked if Adenot. I want to leave my husband, but I also stand by him no matter what. The condom didn't break and he was very into safe sex. She assured him she was on the pill, but he wanted to be safer by using condoms. Yes, she admitted to poking holes when he asked her if she would consider an abortion, and if not, if they could co-parent because he really didn't want a relationship anymore. She admitted to it. Mill knows all of this. She is not in jail because Mill begged my husband to not report it, and he just wanted it all over. My Phil is like Switzerland now. At the beginning, he was very angry until my Sil asked him if they could co-parent because he doesn't want a relationship anymore. She admitted to it. Mill knows all of this. She is not in jail because Mill begged my husband not to report it. He just wanted it all over with. My husband is like Switzerland now. At the beginning, he was angry until my husband asked him if he would feel the same if it happened to her. Mill is on thin ice with Sil since she introduced Mark to Laura on a zoo outing without consulting Sil first. Mill is not allowed alone time with Mark anymore. He has to pay child support until Laura is 18 or has finished her education in the country we live in. He's made sure to make a will leaving her the minimum allowed by law, since you can't disinherit children in the country, but you can leave them the least amount. Mill is very upset about this, since he had me and Mark as the people he would leave his money to. My husband does not want to meet Laura. I'm not going to give her a letter and so on. I'm not going to make him do that. I think my husband is pushing harder since Mark was born because he's amazing with him. We even took him on a trip recently and we love him dearly. We also spend a lot on him because we want to. We own our place, but it's all in my name for obvious reasons. I don't know if Laura knows, but I would never tell her because it's not my place. I think it's horrible to learn about someone you don't even know. Update 1. I want to thank everybody that took the time to reply, even if it was against us. You gave us the push we needed to clear the situation. I am sorry. This is long. I showed my husband the post and after spending a long time reading the comments, he decided enough was enough. Yesterday morning, he texted my sister and my mother-in-law, telling them he would like to meet and sort things out. My sister said we could do it in the afternoon and that Laura was coming too. We all said. I showed my husband the post and the comments. After a long time, he decided that he had had enough. Yesterday morning, he texted my sister and brother-in-law, telling them he would like to meet and sort things out. Mill said we could do it in the afternoon and that Laura was coming too. We all said, okay. My sister and brother-in-law met us at the door because they didn't want to go in before us. It was really tense since the beginning. Laura tried to hug everybody, but we asked her to please not. Then she tried to hug my husband, and he was slightly less polite and asked her to not touch him. My sister was very cheerful somehow. My son Phil was very cheerful and my husband Mill was just offering everyone drinks and snacks. He was in his own world. We sat down, and after what felt like the longest 5 silent minutes of my life, my husband turned to Laura and asked her to please leave him alone. Laura responded that he was her dad and that she would need his support when she went to university, since she was planning to move to our city and it was very expensive and hard to find a place. She said she knew he owned his own place and that he clearly had money to spare, so she was wondering if he would help her out. My husband said no, that he was already paying child support. She will stop as soon as the law allows him to. She was upset, but she carried on. She turned to me and said that, at the end of the day, her husband's will go to her. Mill had explained to her about the inheritance loss, and she wanted to be on good terms with me for when we need to decide what to do with. She asked me if she would get the house, but I told her not to worry because the house is in my name only and there is already a will in place. Laura was a bit shocked and looked at Mill as if she wanted help. She said that even if there is no future money, she thought my husband was unfair to her and that she used to think he simply didn't want to be a dad, but he is amazing with Mark and we even take him on trips. Missile asked her straight up if she knew how she was conceived and she does. Laura knows everything and says that while it was not the nicest way, her mom wanted her. She said that she should understand because she has her cousin, and she would love a relationship with him. My Sil was furious, and Bill told Laura that he would literally call the police if she tried to get near Mark. She started crying, saying that she wanted her family to love her and be as awesome as everybody is with Mark, and that it was not her fault and that her mom is not a bad person. She just wanted a family, but my husband denied them that. My husband said that it was the lying and the deception that cost the relationship, not him, and that if there had been an honest mistake, things would have been different. Everyone is supportive of Mark and says it's not her fault. Her mom is not a bad person. She just wanted a family. My husband said it was the lying and deception that cost the relationship, not him. He said that if there had been an honest mistake, things would have been different. He told her he will never be her dad and that she needs therapy. He said that she could get a job instead of expecting him to pay for her life in the long term. He also said that he is not willing to have contact after today. Mill started begging both her kids not to go, and maybe do family therapy. They both said that he told her that he would never be her dad and that she needs therapy. He said that she could get a job instead of expecting him to pay for her life in the long term, and that he is not willing to have contact after today. Mill started begging both her kids not to go and maybe do family therapy. They both said they would go in with her. Phil is on thin ice. Mill is blocked everywhere. I guess this is it. And see with Mill from all of us. Still and husband seem actually pretty happy with the decision. We had dinner together and the topic was dropped after a couple of minutes. We focused on other stuff. I am sorry there is no we're going to Disneyland Paris twice a week, and I'm happy about that. I think it's probably for the best, and I support my husband's mental health. Edit. I'd like to play devil's advocate about the money. When Mark was born, we started being very active in his life. We have yearly passes to the zoo, we buy him nice things, and we pick him up from daycare. We also took him to Disneyland Paris twice a week and so on. I think my mother-in-law was showing her pictures, which is why it came out like this. Or at least that is my assumption. Her mother is not poor by any means, but she does have 2 other kids. Our city is very popular for student life, which makes it that much more. Our city is very popular with students, which makes it expensive. My husband and I are not interested in having children on our own, but we don't have strong feelings either way about the issue. I know it might have made Mill even more eager to have a relationship with Laura. We were giving her pocket money for some time, but we have decided to stop that as well and let her figure things out. My husband and I don't want to have kids. We don't mind about the issue. I know it might have made Mill even more eager to have a relationship with Laura. We were giving her pocket money for some time, but we have decided to stop that as well and let her figure things out. With her pension alone, I don't think we will have anything else to update in this case, other than if Laura or Mill come around Mark. But I highly doubt this will happen, as much as we don't want a relationship with any of them. These are a teenager and a pensioner, not criminal masterminds. Update 2. I want to start. I'd like to thank everyone for the kind messages and for calling us monsters. We are all human and flawed like everyone else. I thought the issue was over, so I dropped it, but it seems it is not. We had some weeks of bliss and chaos afterwards, and we are all still recovering from it now. I'd like to say again that I'm grateful for all the kind messages and calls we received. We are human and we make mistakes just like everyone else. I thought the issue was over, so I dropped it, but it seems that it is not. We had some weeks of both good and bad times afterwards, and we are all still getting over it now. To what happened to explode our life again? Please keep in mind that it doesn't make me happy. My nephew Mark turned 5 weeks after my last update. After so many messages from my mom and Phil, I still decided to let them come, but told my mom she shouldn't bother me or my husband. My mom didn't talk to us once but kept staring. Things got complicated again. I'm not happy about it, but it's not the end of the world. My nephew Mark was born 5 weeks after my last update. After getting a lot of messages from my mom and Phil, I let them come to visit, but told my mom not to bother my husband or me. My mom didn't talk to us, but she did keep staring. We decided to ignore her. The problem was that I kept holding my stomach, and my husband kept joking about it. I'm not pregnant. I have several allergies to tasty foods that make me bloated, but I sometimes misbehave and eat. My mom doesn't know about most of them since they are. I was pregnant, but I didn't tell anyone. I kept holding my stomach because I'm lactose intolerant, and my husband kept joking about it. I sometimes eat things that make me bloated, but I don't tell my MIL because she's older and doesn't know. We used to go yo-yo with Elsie, so she probably thought I was pregnant. A week after Mark's birthday party is when everything went to hell. Laura came to my husband's office and made a scene. She was screaming at him, saying she couldn't believe he was starting over without taking care of his things. Got tough when Laura came to my husband's office and had a fit. She was yelling at him, saying how could he start over without taking care of his first child. She was throwing office supplies, crying and making a huge fuss. So the office manager called the police and an ambulance. She also called me. By the time I got there, my husband was having a panic attack in his office, thinking he was going to lose his job. I told him not to worry. Don't worry, I'll sort it out. I explained everything to everyone, from my colleagues to the police and EMTs. Laura was taken to be evaluated, and my colleagues took a long lunch so my husband could leave without having the awkward exit. I took my husband home, shaking and panicking, and he said he felt unsafe. I took him to his psychiatrist, who was able to calm him. We also had a session together a few days later, where he told me more about what the mom had done to him. This has been very expensive, but worth it for sure. Laura was not really in trouble, since the office manager agreed to let it go. For an apology would be enough. The mother of Laura was not happy. As soon as she saw my husband at the police station, she went crazy. He couldn't handle it and had another panic attack. This woman is a doctor, but she doesn't care that in the end, she paid the fine and compensation to the office and took Laura. Here's some background about my husband's relationship with Laura's mom. I recently discovered something about them, but I'm not going to go into details. I'll just say that she once threatened him with a knife. It's been really hard to keep it together. I've recently found out some pretty shocking stuff about my husband's relationship with Laura's mom. I won't go into details, but during therapy it came out that she once threatened him with a knife. It's been really tough to stay calm. My husband's reactions here are explained by this. My mom was so fed up with my husband after it, she told her dad he'd have to divorce her or she'd cut him too. It's been 50 years since Phil is literally Phil's favorite person, but he's been married to my mom for 44 years. My dad took my husband camping and they had fun and kept him distracted. He has been mainly on sick leave since the incident. He is a manager, so he would come one day a week and then get the rest of the week covered so he can recover. This was suggested by his bosses. They all feel like they should have protected their employees better. My husband Bill and I had a disagreement about Laura's expenses. I suggested we just give her a one-time payment to see a therapist, but everyone else says she shouldn't get anything. That I said I'd be willing to pay for therapy. But after the new information about my husband's relationship with the mother, my husband Bill and I had a disagreement about Laura's expenses. I suggested we could pay for a block of sessions with a therapist, but everyone else is against the idea. I said I would pay for it, but since I found out about my husband's relationship with Laura's mom, my husband is even more against helping them more than we should. I do feel bad for Laura, and I know that my husband Bill used to be a little helpful, but now there is no way he will help her. The last nice thing my husband did was convince his bosses to not charge Laura and pay for the monitors she broke. Since my husband took a leave of absence, he spends a lot of his afternoons with Mark. My husband, Sil and Bill are trying to get Laura to accept a lump sum payment in therapy, but they don't want her in their lives. Mill and Phil are not talking to each other, and my husband goes to therapy once a week and is slowly getting better. Since my husband left, he spends a lot of his afternoons with Mark. My Sil and Bill are trying to get Laura to accept a payment in therapy, but they don't want her in their lives. Mill and Phil are not talking to each other, and my husband goes to therapy once a week and is slowly getting better. Yes, we know Laura is a victim of her mom, but does that give her the right to hurt my husband again? I still support my husband and probably will be called the worst of the worst, but some advice was very helpful the first few times, so that's why I came back. Update 3. Hi, this will be the last update on the I know Laura is a victim of her mom. But does that give her the right to make my husband feel bad again? I still support my husband and I might be called the worst, but some advice was really helpful the first few times, which is why I came back. Update 3. Hi. This will be the last update on the situation my family has been going through. I again thank you for all your messages, both positive and negative. But I just want to mention one last thing. As bad and awful as some comments were, the chats were worse. I have a thick skin, but if you are going to say such horrible things, have the courage to do it in public to those helping. I'd like to say one more thing. Some of you have said horrible things, but if you're going to say them, have the courage to say them in public to the people who are helping. Since everything happened with Laura at the office, my husband decided to ask for a home office for himself and any other person on his team who wanted one. This ended with most of the company going into it, and a very big bump in their salaries since they stopped renting the building. This meant the child support payments had to be recalculated. Since my husband's bump was significant for several reasons, this also made the negotiations about the lump sum. Some of the lump sums I proposed were cut. My husband might have to pay support until Laura is out of university, but we are okay. We now have a savings account that we both contribute to, but it is only in my name. After all the drama at my husband's office, I received a message from Laura's stepfather. I had never met the man in real life before, but I knew I had to reply. Long story short, he has been trying to contact me. He had wanted to officially adopt Laura for about 10 years, but her mom and even my husband had always told him that my husband refused. He was also told that Laura had a relationship with my husband and even stayed with us sometimes, but we wanted to keep things separate. I honestly don't know if he is gullible, or just he tried to make us feel bad. The conversation ended with him promising to get Laura and her mom into therapy, which was at the end of July. My father died in September. He had a very sudden stroke and shocked us all. His children organized a lovely funeral, and it was the last time we all saw Mill and Laura. Laura stayed. We haven't heard from Mill or Laura since then. Most of the time Laura stayed with my family, but eventually she spoke to my husband. She was respectful and even apologized for what happened at the office. She didn't speak to me, but I didn't mind. She hasn't tried to contact my husband or me since we officially cut all ties with Mill. My husband and I have not changed at all. The whole family knows what is going on, but nobody wants to get involved because they don't want to deal with Mill's tantrums. I am about 4 months pregnant, and my family and I are over the moon. I know many of you will have awful things to say in response. I'm going to give you one last update. I'm about 4 months pregnant, and my husband and I are very happy about it. I know some of you will have negative comments, but for those who have been supportive, know that this has actually been great news to my husband, and he is overjoyed with it. We are going to focus on our family and continue to heal as a unit, which of course includes Bill and my nephew. My nephew only asked if the baby was allowed to go to the zoo with him. He wants to show the monkeys, and he has been telling all his kindergarten friends about it. I think this will be good for all of you. My husband has started talking more about what happened and why he has reacted like this, not only with me but with other people too. I'm happy to say that he has started to open up more about what happened and why he reacted to the situation the way he did. He has told people close to him, including family and friends, but not everyone knows the full story. I know this might upset some people, but sharing his story has made him feel much better and taken away a lot of the guilt he was feeling. I hope that Laura and Mill can heal eventually, but right now we need to focus on this new chapter of our lives and not get distracted. I wish you all well. Third story. I said my husband is a great father to my son. My so-called friend humiliated my husband for abandoning his first daughter with his ex, so I cut ties with them. Now that friend's husband is divorcing her, she blames me for ruining her marriage and forcing her to house her husband. I'm not sure if you know, but my husband is a great father to my son. My so-called friend humiliated my husband for abandoning his first daughter with his ex, so I cut ties with them. Now that friend's husband is divorcing her, she blames me for ruining her marriage and forcing him to leave. My friend and family know my main goal. When he was in his early 20s, my husband got a girl pregnant. They dated casually in college. They had a lot of mutual friends. He didn't want to be a dad and told her as much, but she was adamant about keeping the baby. He was supportive through the pregnancy, but he was clear that he didn't want to be involved, but he wanted to renounce his rights. However, he ended up agreeing to an arrangement where he still pays child support, but doesn't have visitation rights or involvement in any parental decisions. The girl is now 12. He hasn't met her, nor plans to ever do so. I met him 8 years ago. He didn't want to be involved, but he did want to give up his rights. In the end, he made an agreement that says he still has to pay child support, but he doesn't have to visit his daughter or be involved in any decisions about being a parent. She's now 12, and he hasn't met her or plans to ever do so. I met him 8 years ago, and we've been married for almost 7. He told me about the whole having a child with another woman very early on. I was fine with it. It's sad that a child came into the world in those circumstances, but I don't think he was wrong for choosing not to be involved. We now have a 5-year-old son. My husband has always been wonderful to me. That's why I fell in love with him. He was great during the pregnancy and birth, and has been really loving towards our son and me ever since. I think he's a great dad and husband. The problem is that 2 of his friends married their college girlfriends, who were our friends with his daughter's mother. This has happened 3 times in total. I fell in love with him because he was great during the pregnancy and birth, and he has been really loving towards our son and me ever since. I think he's a great dad and husband. The problem is that 2 of his friends married their college girlfriends, who are our friends and his daughter's mother. I said on 3 occasions that my husband is a wonderful father. One of them said something unkind like, "Yeah, to only one of his children." Over the weekend, we went to one of those kids' birthday parties. I was chatting to another mom about motherhood and said that it's easier when you have a good team player in your spouse. The mom who owned the house joined in and said loudly, "If only the mother of his other child had the same." Later, I confronted. She said I was very tired of her and other friends commenting about my husband, that she didn't need to invite us to things or spend time with us if she didn't want to, but it was disrespectful to constantly insult him as a father. She told me she initially liked me, but finds it distasteful and rude that I keep praising my husband as a good father when I am well aware that he isn't. She will always make my friends said I was tired of her and other friends commenting on my husband. She said she didn't need to invite us to things or spend time with us if she didn't want to, but it was really rude of her to constantly insult him as a father. She told me she initially liked me, but she finds it distasteful and rude that I keep praising my husband as a good father when I know he isn't. She will always correct me because it's not okay that he got away with what he did. He now gets to play happy family with me and our son. The conversation went south from then on, and of course we left. The other mom friend texted me yesterday to tell me she completely backs up what the other said. She said I'm horrible for marrying and having a kid with a deadbeat. On top of it, I'm praising him as a good dad. I have no doubts about my feelings. I spoke to one of his friends today, and it seems like this is a lot bigger but not much to do with us. The original post said I was not the mother-in-law, NTA, but people were worried about my husband's daughter's well-being. I also got advice to cut contact with this woman and tell my husband Tim what they were saying about him. After I posted here, he decided to speak to his friend John about what Tim said. The conversation went south from then on, and of course we left. The other mom friend texted me yesterday to tell me she completely backs up what the other said, and that I'm horrible for marrying and having a kid with a deadbeat and praising him as a good dad. I have no doubts about my feelings. My husband has been and is great with our son and with me. I guess I never thought about how my words could be insensitive towards his biological daughter and her mother, whom I've never met. But should I stop saying my husband is a good father when talking to people? Verdict. Not the arsehole edit. Even though I'm NTA per the votes, I will stop all contact with these women, so my comments to them will cease anyway. My husband has been and is great with our son and me. I guess I never thought about how my words could be insensitive towards his biological daughter and her mother, whom I've never met. But should I stop saying my husband is a good father when talking to people? Verdict. Not the arsehole edit. Even though I'm NTA per the votes, I will stop all contact with these women, so my comments to them will cease anyway. My husband spoke to one of his friends today and it seems like this is a lot bigger, but it has not much to do with us. Update. The verdict on my original post was NTA, but people were raising concerns about my husband's biological daughter's well-being. I also got advised to cut contact with this woman and to tell my husband, Tim, what they were saying about him. So I spoke with Tim after I posted here. He decided to speak with his friend John about I spoke to one of his friends today, and it seems like this is a lot bigger, but it has not much to do with us. I updated the original post to say I was NTA, but people were worried about my husband's daughter's well-being. I was also advised to cut contact with this woman and to tell my husband, Tim, what they were saying about him. So I spoke with Tim after I posted here. He decided to speak with his friend John about what his wife Jane was doing. We will cut Jane off after Tim speaks to John. We learned the truth. This wasn't about Tim or me at all. I can only say what John authorized me to share, even when this is anonymous. He prefers not to go into details. While still in college, John and Jane also had an unplanned pregnancy. He wanted an abortion, but she didn't. They were still discussing what to do when she had a miscarriage in the early stages. Jane never told anyone because she didn't want to, and John respected her wishes. My husband never knew about this and felt terrible for them. While they moved on and eventually got married and had kids, it's obvious she isn't over it and still feels resentful towards him for his stance at the time. Since our son was born, it seems she has been occasionally unloading her feelings on Tim because she feels this is how it would have gone for her. If she hadn't lost the baby, this is what John said. I have not spoken to Jane, so I don't know her side. John confronted her after Tim spoke to him. They had a big fight because John did not like what she had done and immediately saw what the real reason behind it was. He has been staying in our guest house for almost 2 weeks now, but we hope they will work through it for the sake of their family. She hates us even more now though for hosting him. So if she didn't miscarry, this is what John said. I haven't spoken to Jane, so I don't know her side of the story. John confronted her after Tim spoke to him. They had a big fight because John didn't like what she had done and immediately saw what the real reason behind it was. He has been staying in our guest house for almost 2 weeks now, but we hope they will work through it for the sake of their family. She hates us even more now though for hosting him, so we are not really sure how our friendship will fare if they reconcile. The most important part of the update is that John contacted his biological daughter's mom, Callie, after fighting with Jane. He told her everything and asked her to stop feeding Jane's irrational feelings because she was taking them out on us instead of him and causing problems for Tim. Kelly ended up contacting me on social media. This was the first time that has ever happened. We're not sure how our friendship will be affected if they reconcile. The most important part of the update is that John contacted his biological daughter's mom, Callie, after fighting with Jane. He told her everything and asked her to stop feeding Jane's irrational feelings because she was taking them out on us instead of him and causing problems for Tim. Kelly ended up contacting me on social media, which was a first. I was really surprised and concerned when I saw her first message. She wanted to speak to me mother to mother and clear things out, so I responded and we got to chatting. Tim was informed that she wanted me to know she didn't want anything more from Tim than what they had agreed on, and that she never fed anything to Jane regarding him. They don't even talk that often, and she wanted no part of this mess nor to be involved. I told her that we had a feeling she wasn't involved in the situation and I appreciated her telling me, but really this had nothing to do with her. I apologized if the drama disturbed her and her daughter. We chatted on from there, and she's a lovely person. She is married and her husband Sal has been in their daughter's, Ellie, life since she was about 2. She calls him Dad. They also have a younger daughter together. I told her that we thought she wasn't involved in the situation, and I thanked her for telling me. I apologized if the drama was disturbing for her and her daughter. We then started chatting and she turned out to be a lovely person. She is married to Sal, who has been in their daughter Ellie's life since she was about 2. They also have a younger daughter together. She knew about Tim being married to me and about us having a son because Jane had told her. Jane had told her that she had no interest in hearing about him, but I told Tim about my chats with Callie. After some thought and a lot of back and forth, we ended up having a video call with the four of us, Tim and I, Callie and Sal, just this past weekend. It was awkward at first, but we mostly talked about Ellie. We saw pictures of her. A beautiful girl. Sal and Callie have been wanting him to adopt Ellie officially, but they were honest about how their finances would suffer from losing the child support. Plus, the biggest obstacle is that they don't want Ellie to lose her college fund from Tim, because they would have a very hard time providing college funds for both their daughters. They're not poor, but they don't have much savings. After the call, it was decided that Tim would not be Ellie's father and Sal would adopt her officially. However, Ellie would keep her college fund. They would decide how and what to tell her about the money. For now, she knows her birth father was doing his best. Without the child support, they're not poor or anything, but they just don't have the money to save that much. Long story short, after this call, it was decided that Tim will not be the child's father and Sal will adopt Ellie officially, but Ellie will keep her trust fund. They will decide how and what to tell her about the money, as well as where it comes from. So far, she knows her birth father was paying half of the money. I don't think they'd lie to her about it. This will take some time to be finalized. We only just started, and we still need to consider if and when our children want to meet, which is a difficult topic to tackle. We agreed to continue discussing it over time, but we are all happy. Tim says this is how it should have been all along, and Callie and Sal seem thrilled about it. So, half of the financial responsibility is on them. I don't think they'd lie to her about it. This will take some time to be finished. We only just started, and we still need to consider if and when our children want to meet. This is a difficult topic to talk about, but we agreed to continue discussing it over time. We are all happy, and Tim says this is how it should have been all along. Callie and Sal seem thrilled about finally being an official family. There was even a very nice moment when Sal told Tim, "You have a lovely family," and Tim replied, "Thanks, so do you." So, thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends. Hello, comment.